appropriate action. And at every step, the facts and the law will guide us forward.
Joining me now, nationally syndicated radio talk show host and MSNBC contributor Michael Smerconish. We also have with us former federal prosecutor Kendall Coffey and criminal defense attorney John Burst. Gentlemen, thank you again for joining me. I want to clarify with Attorney General Eric Holder, this is a parallel investigation into whether or not Trayvon Martin's civil rights were violated, not this criminal investigation that's happening. But Kendall, let me start off with you. We're waiting here, and this word can come any second from Angela Corey. We have a news conference that's expected from the family, another one, second one for the day at 5 p.m. Eastern time. But you also have this issue of George Zimmerman. Let me play quickly, Kendall, what his attorney said this morning on the Today Show regarding George Zimmerman's whereabouts in all of this.
I don't believe he's a flight risk. He is not in the area. I can't disclose where he is. He's where he won't be found. He is in contact with FDLE. If it becomes necessary for him to turn himself in, I believe he'll do it. I don't believe he's going to flee the country. And
we don't know if he's going to be required, Kendall, to return himself in, if he's going to be charged. What do you make of the situations? And I hate to use the word strangeness because we're talking about the loss of life, as we heard the Martin family say their son is in a mausoleum right now. But what do you make of these developments?
Well, it's just so extraordinary. I mean, you kind of run out of words that his attorneys would be saying to the whole nation that their client is basically hiding. Obviously, if in fact Zimmerman is in touch with FDLE and is prepared to cooperate with whatever the decision of Angela Corey is, that's a big plus factor. And it could do him a whole lot of good in the event that charges are brought. Because as we know, one of the things that's considered evidence of guilt is taken off, is hiding. Up to now, his attorneys are saying he's hiding from the press. He's hiding from hostile strangers and third parties. But if it becomes even remotely suggested that he's hiding from law enforcement, whatever his problems are going to get a lot bigger.
And Michael, I know you have strong opinions on so much related to this case, but I'm curious of your take on how these attorneys for George Zimmerman handled that news conference, bringing up his mental state of mind, that he'd spoken off the record to Sean Hannity despite them urging him to stay silent in all of this.
I was shocked by the media availability and the things that they have said, and I think that there are some ethical issues that are raised by that which they offered about their client's state of mind. Tamron, I put these events together, and we're all just trying to read the tea leaves, but I put together the 72-hour notification and them coming forward and saying we are not representing him, and I can't help but wonder, do they think that an indictment is imminent, and are they concerned about their ability to produce their client, and is that why they decided that they were going to get out now?
And John, we know that George Zimmerman's father was a judge, and to everyone's point, if you are charged or possibly facing charges, why would you ever attempt to reach a prosecutor without your representation present and aware of this? When you look at all of this and knowing that his father has a legal background, to Michael's point, we're reading tea leaves here, but you're an experienced attorney. You've seen difficult clients who might be afraid. But what do you make of the actions here?
Well, I think he's just out of control and doesn't really appreciate the various limitations that he has as a potential defendant. You cannot, and defendants do this, they think they can talk their way out of things. All they really do is talk their way in. And so from my point of view, he basically doesn't want to follow his lawyer's advice, and he thinks he can talk his way out of it, pretty much like he thinks that he had a right to do what he did. So for me, it only goes to his mental state. It might even be setting up a kind of a defense for this person, and because of his bizarre behavior, I wouldn't rule that out as well. Like everyone else, I thought the defense counsels were out of their league. They should not have done what they did unless they ultimately had a conflict in terms of statements that were made. But even that, you don't expose that to the public and talk about things your client has said to you and confidentially.
Well, John, those attorneys responded to some of that criticism that you just laid out regarding their actions in that news conference. Let me play what they had to say.
George had contacted the prosecutor's office directly. One of the things every defense attorney tells his client is don't talk to the prosecutors, don't talk to the cops. Frankly, don't talk to anybody until we get control of the situation and do it through counsel. We were a bit astonished.
And he went on to say they absolutely stand by everything up to this point, and they say that they acted within the guidelines. But Kendall, this 72-hour notice from Angela Corey, to Kerry Sanders' point, everyone is looking at their Blackberries. People who are following this story glued to television or social media to hear this word. To me, that ramps up the anticipation, the anxiety, for lack of a better description. Why do you believe she announced that it would be 72 hours as opposed to today? Or, I mean, what about this length, this what seems like to be drawn out here?
Well, I think that she wanted to give herself a little bit of room in case something happened. And we don't know what that something might have been. But
what is she looking for room? Help me understand what you mean by that. Looking for room from what?
Well, it could be anything from maybe George Zimmerman has an attorney who calls and says, let me bring him in. He is going to talk to you. He will open up and justify this. I'm just pointing to possibilities, Tamara, because I think the bottom line is when that announcement went out yesterday, she intended most likely to have a press conference sometime today. We may be all surprised by what happens, but nevertheless, if I were in her position, I would want to give myself a little flexibility because what if? There's so much happening. This case has taken on a life of its own, and to give herself a little bit of room in case there was something in the ensuing hours makes some sense to me.
Kendall, what is the TikTok here? Does she call the Martin family and let them know her decision? And if, let's say, George Zimmerman has an attorney that he hires within the next several hours, would the call then be made to that attorney and then the public would be made aware, meaning the media and the public?
That's exactly what I think the protocol would be. She is very victim-oriented. So I think the first folks outside of the law enforcement team that's handling this, they're going to be notified, are going to be the victim's family. We say alleged victims up to now. Additionally, of course, she would then want to contact whoever is representing George Zimmerman, if anybody, and it might be that as we're speaking, FDLE agents are in the process of trying to locate the guy, trying to affect whatever might be a voluntary surrender or other form of process. But bottom line, she's victim-oriented. She's going to start out notifying the victim's family, alleged victim's family, in my opinion.
Michael, I always like to point out that you talk with people all day on your radio show from across the country here. You heard Trayvon Martin's family and their attorney say, whatever the decision, this family is believing in prayer and they're believing in the justice system working its course in this situation. What are you hearing regarding the anxiety and the worry of whatever the announcement is and how this feeds into the emotions with this case right now?
I just discussed this case for a solid hour, had phone calls from all across the country, and what distresses me, Tamarin, the number of people who think they know what went on here, and it's almost as if they're cheering for a particular outcome instead of cheering for a full factual discussion to now be made. And you know, I want the facts to come out and justice to follow the facts, whatever those facts might be.